Welcome, everyone. So I have a few questions for the audience. Will I have the microphone? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Does anyone know this language? Hebrew, right. How many letters do you know in Hebrew? Letters. You know the letter Aleph, right? And if you letters, you can know Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, right? So it reminds me of one time doing my PhD when one of the students took a paper written in Russian without knowing a word of Russian and then translating it to English. So what I'm showing you here is a little textbook that I wrote. This is for my programming languages course at the Technion. And perhaps you can guess what this book is about? What? You want it to be larger, right. Do you recognize the language? Anyone here recognize the language? I do, right? Anyone has programmed in this language? Raise hands. I don't raise my hands. I did program in this language. Wait a second. Maybe I'll show you the manual of this language. Well, the language has 8 atomic functions. The documentation is in Hebrew, but the examples are sufficient. It's very similar to a language you know. If you're really good, you identify a small difference between this and another language you know. Here's the 8 atomic functions, and here are the library functions. You can recognize them as well. So you have defun, you have lambda, you have nil, null, ndefun, and lambda. Anyone heard of n lambda and ndefun? You heard, right. Quote, and t, and nil. These are the predefined. This is the language, and this is the textbook. It's not very long. It's about 35 pages long. And I added, it became a little longer because I added a title in English. And something that I teach in my programming languages course, it's about 2 or 3 lectures. First lecture is teaching people Mini-Lisp. Second lecture is writing the evaluator of Mini-Lisp, eval with Mini-Lisp. This is the language I'm teaching here. It's very similar to Lisp. And very quickly I made quick introduction, quick presentation. So I'm Joseph Giel, also known as Yossi. I work at the Technion. The last Lisp program that I wrote was back in 1982, I think. And this was writing a symbolic derivative, something that do something like maxima compute the derivative of a symbolic function. And I use Vim. My research interests include many fields, not functional programming. And 2 or 3 years ago, I got tired of students complaining, learning Lisp, because Lisp is not used anywhere. That's what they say. And even the instructor does not program in Lisp. So what I did is I took out Lisp and I cut out everything around just to keep the essence, what students need to know, and nothing else. Well, what I think they should know. So Lisp, it's smaller than ULisp. It's probably the smallest Lisp you've seen. I can make it a little bit smaller. So it has no numbers, strings, whatever. It's only symbolic computations, only atoms, etc., no plus. It has no I/O. It's totally useless language. It has no macros. It has something which is similar to macros called ndefun. Ndefun is a function. Defining a function does not have eager parameter passing. And if you wanted to make it a macro, you should probably call eval yourself. Lexical scoping, why not? Lexical scoping is fun, is difficult to understand. You can't find it anywhere. Let's use it in Mini-Lisp. And functions and variables are used the same. And the reference manual will have a list of the primitive functions. You all know them. You have the list of library functions. Perhaps lambda and n lambda are not so familiar. They're just variants of macros. And I have an implementation. And I'm writing a book. There is no bootstrapping yet. I plan on doing the bootstrapping. If I have time for a lightning talk tomorrow, I'll tell you a little bit more about the implementation. And there was one more thing I wanted to show you. Well, I mean, this is all Hebrew. Makes no sense, and you shouldn't be reading it. It looks like something which is not total nonsense. But let me show you something that you might be able. Well, maybe you know this one. What does that mean? What is that? REPL, right. And you know what this is? This is the actual code of REPL. So the book of Mini-Lisp injects into itself, incorporates into itself some of the code of the implementation, in particular REPL. And it's a very nice printout. It's very similar to literate programming. There was someone here who talked about literate programming earlier today. He's not here anymore. And very nice printing, similar to Knut's printing. And if I look into the source file, let me do it very quickly. Oh, wait a second. There is also an implementation. Let me write down the implementation, show the implementation very quickly. Two of the implementations, one in JavaScript and one in the command line. Whoop. So if you do A, then it's an error because A is undefined. If you do the carve A, this is also going to be a problem because A is not defined, so maybe you can do carve A. And this will also not work, but perhaps car of A and B should be A, I think. Yeah, got it. Maybe we can do set A to quote. That's about all the Lisp I know, right? What did I do wrong? Whoa. There's also a traceback, but this didn't work for me. I don't know what's wrong. Okay, and we want to see the source of the LaTeX. Maybe we can find it somewhere. Not here. Wait a second. Do you recognize this language? What is it? LaTeX, right? That's correct. And we include here a file, right? Let's go to that file. Do you recognize it? The same thing that appeared in the book. Questions? Questions? I'm done. Sure. No, there are no macros, that's correct. What? The binding is dynamic, okay? Now, macros...
Can you introduce it?
Can I what?
Introduce it to the expansion.
Can I introduce statical scoping?
Oh, that belongs to eval, maybe.
What?
Oh, okay. Yeah, my question was, can you pass a lexical environment to function expansion?
Executable environment.
No. For variables, you know, if you want to define...
Oh, the variables are defined with
lexical
set.
variables.
There's a single alias which is being used both for the stack and for the global definitions. Oh, there was one more thing that I want to show you. I want to show you the code of eval. It's also part of the lecture, and it's about 80 lines, very quickly. It's all right? What? 25 cents for the coffee or for the eval? Eval, yeah, 2 cents. Oh, wait a second. Do you see what I do here? When I teach Lisp, I also teach them LL parsing and leftmost parsing. This is the parsing of the Lisp, how it's being done with the LL parsing. That's another side effect of the language. And, okay, all the bits here that are in olive shade are parts of the interpreter, of the eval. And this is eval. One page, or half a page, another page. That's it. This is eval, including all auxiliary functions. So, 2 hours, 2 lectures, you finish Mini-Lisp, you finish eval, and then what we do in our programming language course, we do what I call perturbations, changes. So I take the structure of Mini-Lisp and shake it. So I say, what happens if I remove the function set? Does it become easier or more difficult? What functions can I remove? So for example, one thing that you can learn is you can get away without defining set, without implementing eval without set and without define. How do you do that? Parameter passing. And I haven't done that yet, but it is possible to trim down Mini-Lisp so much that eval would become basically the church, not the church encoding, the church implementation of the lambda calculus within itself. Because what happens here, if you remove everything out of Mini-Lisp, you remove the car and the cons and coulter, set is easy to remove, but the other things that are more difficult. Once you do that, you are left basically with the function application mechanism, which is basically the lambda calculus. So this is basically a crash course in basic concepts of Lisp programming and evaluation and perhaps the lambda calculus and also parsing and a little bit more. Thank you very much.
We had one question from online that somebody would like the Yiddish translation of your book.
The Yiddish translation
of your book.
That's a very good question, actually, because the book actually started as a joke when I wrote it in biblical Hebrew. Yeah, the book was written in biblical Hebrew, including the punctuation marks and the cantillation marks, etc. It's kind of a joke, and then, I decided to modernize it, and I think I'll probably make an English translation for some of you. Thank you. If anyone is interested.
Okay.
Thank you.